Russ Jones is. And because his career is so vast and so varied, I even prepared some notes. And all of you know, Russell included, that I never give up the opportunity of saying a few words. So I got a few words I got to say about you.
Great.
And I don't mean to get into things that, but I think that it's important that we really know, after all these years, it struck me that most of us don't really know you. So I'm going to say some things about you that you may not want me to say, but I'm going to say them anyway. So please don't be disturbed by what I say. Because Russ doesn't talk about himself at all. However, when he does talk, they can hear him in China. So. Anyway, well, let's see where you look at Russ and you see what? You see an impressive man, a person who we all know is a great lawyer, and a guy who's humble and kind. And there's an inconsistency between a great lawyer maybe and humble and kind, but Russ maximizes that. Never talks about himself. So it's time that we talk about you a little bit. So I'm going to talk about you. Russ was born in Albuquerque, whether you knew it or not, but he was raised in the thriving metropolis of Clarksdale, Arizona. Mm-hmm. Now, if you ask me where Clarksdale is, I have the foggiest notion. So, Russell, wherever Clarksdale is, it misses you. You were one of their people that they can say, I'm very proud to have had Russ as having been raised in Clarksdale, Arizona.
I just drove through there last week. It's not that far away.
Oh, well, good. You know, so if you want to know where it is, ask Steve. Or Russ, I suppose. But at any rate, he was educated in a one-room schoolhouse where they taught 1st to 12th grades. Well, maybe that's an exaggeration. But, in any event, and then Russ was at the university, but as the war broke up, World War II, and most of you, well, some of us here remember World War II, most of you don't. I'm looking at you, and a few other, Robert, and so forth. But you guys had to read about it, and Russ lived it. He lived World War II, and the service was incredible. He tried to join the Navy, but Russ always had bad vision, so they said, well, I tried to get in the Air Force, but they rejected me too. So Russ got rejected from the Navy, and it's the only rejection he's ever had in his life, so I guess that you're proud. But what happened then is he ends up in the Army. And they decided that Russ ought to be an engineering officer in the Army. But all of a sudden they decided, wait a minute, we need a lot of guys in the infantry, so from being an engineering officer, he ends up in the infantry. And he served in the Pacific. I am kind of a follower of World War II because I was young during that period of time, couldn't serve in World War II. But I know that from everything I've read, the Pacific and everything that you all have read was probably the worst area of World War II to serve military service. Not only that, but Russ was at the invasion of Leyte, one of the most famous battles in history. Leyte was a terribly difficult battle. Leyte was, to those who've read about it, was where General MacArthur returned walking through the surf, and he said, I have returned, quote unquote, famous words. But don't ask Russ about General MacArthur. He has a different view of good old Douglas MacArthur. But at any rate, when he finished his unit was relieved finally in Leyte, and one of the most difficult things that he encountered in Leyte was the fact that wearing glasses, you couldn't see a damn thing. So how you shot your rifle, I don't know, but anyway, you had to keep wiping your eyeglasses. But then from there, not only coming out of the frying pan into the fire, he went into a worse fire in Okinawa. And if anybody knows anything about Okinawa, that was probably the most costly, most difficult battle in the Pacific. Russ was in that invasion. He was wounded. They took him to Guam on a ship. And on the ship, he gets attacked with kamikaze pilots. We all know what kamikaze pilots did during World War II. He made it safely to Guam, recovered. So what do? They sent him back to Okinawa. So he finished the campaign in Okinawa, and it became relatively secure, they started training for an invasion of Japan. So Russ would have been in the invasion of Japan. And for that reason, alone, I would thank Truman for deciding that he should use the atomic bomb. It saved an awful lot of people, including our dear friend Russell. Well, he left the military service, came back to Arizona, and very beautifully put some of this to words, but he started back at the university. And those of you who know what a houseboy in a sorority is, Russ was a houseboy. Now, can you look at this distinguished gentleman and say, Russ was a houseboy serving food to a bunch of sorority girls? Well, that was Russ. But guess what? That's where he met Gretchen. And for 64 years later, they have been happily married, and Gretchen has put up with all of Russell's oddities. Let's just leave it as oddities. So,
How about idiosyncrasies?